I don't know how to say this without sounding completely unhinged, but something is wrong with this apartment. Not like a leaky faucet or a noisy neighbor kind of wrong. I mean the kind of wrong that you feel in your chest before you can even name it. Like something was already here before we moved in, and it's been waiting. We signed the lease 3 weeks ago. After years of barely scraping by, Jamie and I finally had a place to call ours. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom on the 7th floor of a tower block. But after everything we'd been through, it felt like winning the lottery. Every other place we'd looked at was either trashed, overpriced, or gone before we could even blink. So when this one showed up, cheap, available immediately, no deposit, no inspection required, we didn't ask questions. That should have been the first red flag. Move-in day was a blur. Boxes, elevator trips, furniture that barely fit through the door. By the time night fell, we were completely wiped out, but it still felt good. We sat on a busted second-hand couch, smoked on the balcony, and looked out at the park below. Jamie put his arm around me and said, "This is it." And for one honest moment, I believed him. That feeling didn't last long, because the next morning, I found something. Jamie had left early, 3:15 a.m., early shift. I didn't think anything of it. I was half asleep, making coffee, barely functional. I pulled open one of the kitchen cabinets, looking for mugs, and there it was, tucked between a spare set of keys and an old pack of batteries. A folded piece of paper. On the front, in neat cursive handwriting, it said, "New occupier of flat 42. Something about that phrasing didn't sit right with me, but I opened it anyway. At first, it read like a goodbye letter. An elderly woman explaining she'd lived there for decades, lost her husband, had to move on. It felt personal, almost sad, like she didn't want to leave. But then the tone shifted, and I mean shifted fast. There was one line I keep coming back to even now. If you are to survive here, survive. Who writes something like that? My first instinct was to laugh it off. Like, okay, the previous tenant was a little dramatic. But then I kept reading, and the smile just disappeared. The first rule seemed normal enough. Pay rent on time. Avoid unnecessary contact with the landlord. Fine, whatever. But the second rule, do not use the elevator between 1:11 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. Not a tip, not a suggestion, a warning. Repeated twice on the same line, like she needed to make absolutely sure I understood. And that's when something in me stopped treating this like a joke and started treating it like something that mattered. The rules got darker from there. Noises from other apartments, don't go looking. A man who might appear on the balcony, don't speak to him. Neighbors who shouldn't exist, but might knock anyway. And then one line made my stomach actually drop. Keep a weapon in every room. I just sat there after that, listening. The apartment was dead quiet, and you know that feeling when everything seems fine, but something deep in your gut is saying run? That's exactly what that silence felt like. I told myself it was fake. Had to be. Some weird joke from an eccentric old lady with too much time on her hands. But then I noticed something that changed everything. The damp patch on the ceiling above our bed. We'd both spotted it the night before and shrugged it off. But in the note, she described it. Exactly. Not just that it was there, but what it could become. That's when the unease really kicked in. I checked the clock. 9:14 a.m. Already too late to catch the postman she'd mentioned. For some reason, that detail bothered me more than anything else. I walked to the front door and opened it. 2 letters on the mat, still addressed to her, which meant she hadn't been gone long. I went back inside and read the note again, then again, looking for something, anything that felt like a lie, something that didn't add up. And then I heard it, a knock. Not at the front door, the balcony, I froze, turned slowly, and there he was, a man, standing outside, on the 7th floor, smiling like it was the most normal thing in the world, tapping on the glass with one knuckle, holding what looked like window cleaning equipment. "Morning, just checking if you need the windows done." Casual, friendly, like nothing was wrong, but everything was wrong. There were no ropes, no safety harness, no platform, no scaffolding, nothing beneath his feet except 7 floors of open air. Just him, smiling, watching me. I didn't move, didn't speak. The rule was clear: do not engage. So I stood there. He knocked again, kept talking, asked for water, offered to clean the windows at a good price. Went on for 10 minutes, 15, 20, still smiling. And the longer I stood there, the worse it felt, because I started to realize he wasn't just persistent, he was testing me, waiting to see if I'd crack, if I'd reach for the door handle just to make it stop. 30 minutes later, he turned around and walked away. I ran to the window, checked every angle, every balcony, every ledge. He was gone, completely gone. That's when I grabbed my phone and texted Jamie, "Come home, something's wrong." No reply. I waited an hour, then 2, still nothing. So I called his job, and that's when everything broke apart. He never showed up for his shift. He never even made it to work. His shift started at 4 a.m. He left at 3:15. The note said, "Do not use the elevator between 1:11 and 3:33. He walked right into it. I don't know what happened to him in there. I don't know if any of this is real, but I know one thing for certain. Something in this building is not normal, and I think we made a very big mistake moving here. It's getting late now. I just checked the time again, 1:09 a.m., and I can hear the elevator moving, slowly, coming up. I didn't sleep that night, not even close. I just sat there in the dark, replaying it over and over. Jamie leaving at 3:15, half awake, probably didn't even think twice about hitting the elevator button. Just stepped inside like he had 100 times before, and now he was gone. By the time the clock hit 3:34 a.m., I was still on the couch, staring at my phone, waiting for a message that wasn't coming. I told myself I wasn't going to break the rules. Whatever was in that elevator, I wasn't going anywhere near it. But knowing Jamie had been in there, it was eating me alive. So I waited. I mean really waited. Even after 3:33 passed, I didn't move for another half hour. Like some part of me thought the window might still be open. It wasn't until 4:02 that I finally made myself get up and walk into the hallway. The building felt different at that hour. Quieter, but not peaceful quiet. More like everything was holding its breath. The elevator was right there at the end of the corridor. Old metal doors, scratched buttons, the kind that looked like they'd been installed before I was born and never once serviced. I stood there for a second just staring at it, thinking about Jamie standing in this exact spot. Then I pressed the button. The doors opened immediately. No delay, no sound. That felt wrong. I stepped in, rode it down, then up, then down again, stopping on random floors, shining my phone flashlight into every corner, looking for, I don't even know, something, anything. But there was nothing, no signs, no marks, no evidence that anything had ever happened inside this metal box, like it had just erased itself. That was somehow worse than finding something. I went back to the apartment and collapsed into the chair, didn't even cry at first, just sat there scrolling through old messages from Jamie, reading the note over and over like the words might suddenly rearrange themselves into something that made sense. That's when I called Georgia. I told her everything. The note, the rules, the man on the balcony. Jamie being gone. Even as I said it out loud, I could hear how insane it sounded. But Georgia didn't laugh, didn't question me. She just said, "I'm coming over." And for the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't feel completely alone. But before she got there was something I had to do first. The postman. The note mentioned him like he was the only person in this building who actually knew what was going on, and I'd already missed him once. I wasn't going to let that happen again. So I stood by the door, watching the clock. 8:52, 8:53. Right at 8:54, a knock. I opened the door immediately, and there he was, Ian Flanders. He looked nothing like I expected. Not some warm, grandfatherly type. He had this sharp energy about him. Gold chain, sleeve tattoos, dyed black hair. The kind of guy you'd step aside for without really knowing why. But his eyes were something else entirely. They looked like he already knew exactly why I'd opened the door. "You must be the new tenant," he said. Not asked. Said. I didn't waste any time. I told him about the note, about Jamie, about the elevator, about the man on the balcony, everything. And for the first time since all of this started, someone didn't look confused. He just looked tired. Then he said something I wasn't even close to ready for. "He's dead, love," just like that. No hesitation, no softness in the delivery, just fact. I shook my head immediately. There has to be something I can do. You've seen everything here. There has to be a way. He paused, just for a second. "There are ways," he said slowly, "but nothing you'd want to try, nothing I'd want to try." I asked him what actually happens in that elevator. What's in there? He hesitated, which, given how he'd talked about everything else, scared me more than anything he'd actually said. Then he sighed, leaned back, and told me about the creatures. He said they weren't always in this building. Years ago, when they first showed up, there were hundreds of them. Small, roughly human-shaped, but completely wrong. Rodent-like faces, too many teeth, always hungry. The building went into chaos, people dying, entire floors wiped out, until eventually the remaining residents made a deal. The creatures stay contained, controlled, and in return they get fed. Anyone who steps into that elevator between 1:11 and 3:33 becomes the food. I just sat there trying to let that land, trying to picture Jamie in that elevator with those things closing in around him. I couldn't let myself go there. "Has anyone ever survived?" I asked. He nodded. "Once," he said. And that's when it got worse, because the person who survived was the woman who wrote the note. I should have slammed the door the second I heard it. "Hi, I'm your neighbor." And then, "I'm from flat 71. My blood went cold, but I didn't slam the door, because some part of my brain was still holding on to normal, still trying to convince me this was just an apartment building, that people knocked on neighbors' doors, that this was fine. So I opened it. She looked completely ordinary, mid-30s, maybe early 40s, dark hair, calm smile, the kind of person you wouldn't blink twice at passing in a grocery store. She introduced herself, said she'd just moved in upstairs, said she thought she'd come say hello, and I let her in. That was my first mistake. Georgia was already on the couch, trying to hold herself together after everything I'd just told her. She smiled at the woman like this was some normal neighborly visit. Perfect timing, we were just sitting down, and for a moment, it looked like exactly that. 3 people in a living room, talking, but something was wrong. The second the woman stepped fully inside, the air changed, got heavier, warmer. Georgia noticed it first. She shifted in her seat, wiped her hands on her jeans, and then she started sweating. Not normal sweating, not "it's a warm day" sweating, something else. Her skin started to shine, then to drip. I was about to ask if she was okay when the woman looked at me. Not at Georgia, at me. And she smiled. But this time it didn't reach her eyes. That's when it clicked. Flat 71. The rule. My stomach hit the floor. I opened my mouth to warn Georgia, but I was too late. She gasped. That sharp, broken kind of sound. And then she screamed. I will never forget that sound. Her skin started blistering. Right there in front of me. No fire. No heat source. Nothing touching her. And yet she was burning. Arms first. Then her face. The skin splitting and peeling back like something was overheating her from the inside. Her hair came loose in clumps. And the smell, God, the smell hit the back of my throat and just stayed there. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I just stood there watching her claw at her own skin, screaming, trying to pull off something that wasn't even there. And the whole time, the woman just stood there watching me, not helping, not reacting, not even blinking. Like this was the part she'd been waiting for. Something in me snapped. I grabbed the knife off the counter, one I didn't even remember putting there, and ran straight at her. The handle burned the second I touched it. Not hot outside on a summer day hot. I mean, this shouldn't be physically possible to hold hot. But I didn't let go. I closed the distance and drove it forward, into her neck. There was resistance. Then it gave. She dropped, but there was no red blood. Black, thick, wrong. And even as she hit the floor, she was still moving, still alive. That terrified me more than anything. I grabbed her by the arms, dragged her across the floor, yanked the front door open, and shoved her into the hallway. Then I turned back. Georgia was on the floor, still breathing, barely. Her skin, I can't describe what it looked like. I don't want to. I called an ambulance, didn't give my name, just the address. Then I carried her out of the building and left her near the park where someone would find her. Then I walked back inside, alone, back into that apartment, because as much as I wanted to leave, I couldn't. Not while there was still even the smallest chance Jamie could be brought back. There are ways, Ian had said, nothing you'd want to try, but I had to know. I didn't sleep, not properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Georgia, the way her skin looked, the sound she made, and every time I opened them, I saw the note sitting exactly where I'd left it, like it was waiting for me. So I started searching. It took hours. Old records, forum posts, dead links, local news archives. Most of it went nowhere, like the previous tenant had been deliberately erased, until I found an article. Old, quiet little local news piece. A missing child. Leila Hemmings. It said she disappeared years ago, while under the care of her grandmother, same last name. Prudence Hemmings, the woman who wrote the note. My stomach dropped, because that meant she hadn't just lived here, she had lost something in this building. Just like me. I kept digging. Found an obituary for her husband, Bernard Hemmings. Said he fell from the building, unexplained circumstances. That phrase stuck, because now I knew exactly what unexplained probably meant. At the bottom of the article was a contact number. From there, it wasn't hard to find an address. I got ready, grabbed my bag, and for the first time since we moved in, I chose the stairs without even thinking about it. The stairwell felt wrong in a different way than the elevator. Not dangerous, just off. The numbers didn't add up. 7, 6, 5, 5 again, then 4, 3, 4 again. I stopped twice, staring at the walls, trying to make sense of it. I couldn't, so I kept moving. When I finally stepped outside, the air felt lighter, like I'd just walked out of something that didn't follow the same rules as the rest of the world. The house was small, quiet, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times and never once notice. I knocked. After a moment, an older woman opened the door. She looked at me carefully, not confused, not startled, careful. "My name is Kat," I said. "I'm looking for Prudence Hemmings." Then she stepped aside. "Come in." No questions, no hesitation. And somehow, that made everything feel worse. Inside, everything was still. She sat down across from me and studied my face like she already knew exactly why I was there. "I wondered how long it would take," she said. "You left the note," I said. She nodded. "I couldn't fit everything in it, but I thought it would be enough to give you a head start." A head start. Something snapped inside me. "My boyfriend is gone," I told her. "He used the elevator before I even found the note." For the first time, her expression changed. Not shock, not confusion, just regret. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. That one word said everything. No denial, no "are you sure?" Just confirmation. "He's gone, isn't he?" I asked. She didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I didn't want to know. Then she said something that made my heart jump. "There are ways to bring people back." I leaned forward, but not as themselves. And just like that, whatever was left of my hope twisted into something else entirely. "What does that mean?" I asked. She shook her head. "You don't want to know." "Tell me." Her expression hardened. No, not angry. Final. That scared me more than anything she'd said so far, because it meant whatever she knew was worse than what I'd already seen. So I changed the question. "What about the others? The ones who show up from apartments that shouldn't exist? Who are they?" She leaned back slightly. "They're not residents. Never were." Her voice dropped. "There was a fire years ago. A whole floor gone. People died in their homes." "That's what the note said," I told her. She shook her head. "That's just the part you're supposed to know." My stomach turned. Then what actually happened? She looked at me for a long moment, like she was deciding. "Before the fire," she said slowly, "people entered the building. Not residents, not visitors, just people. No one ever identified them." She paused, and after that, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. "They're still there," I said. She nodded. "They knock. They ask for things. They pretend." Her eyes met mine. "But they are not what they look like." I thought about Georgia, about what happened when I let one inside, and every single rule in that note suddenly felt like it had been written in blood. I sat there for a while. Then I asked the question I shouldn't have. "What happened to your husband?" The room went silent. She looked at me, and for the first time there was something close to anger behind her eyes. "I told you, there are things I don't discuss." I should have stopped, but I didn't. "I just lost someone," I said. "I need to understand what I'm dealing with." She stared at me for a long moment. Then finally, she spoke. "He forgot the rules. He left food out." Another pause, and something came. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "I found it eating him." I felt my stomach twist. "He was still alive," she added. And then I pushed him off the balcony. I froze. I didn't want anyone to know what really killed him. The way she said it wasn't emotional. It was practical, like it had been the only option available. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. This place doesn't just change what happens to you. It changes what you're willing to do. She looked at me one last time. "If you're still thinking about bringing him back, don't." I should have left after that. After everything she told me. After what happened to her husband. After the way she said "don't like it" wasn't even a warning anymore. Like it was a plea. That should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because underneath all the fear, something else was still there. Hope. Or maybe just stubbornness. the part of me that refused to let go. I need to know, I said. If there's even a chance, I need to understand it. She didn't answer right away, just looked at me, really looked at me, like she'd seen this exact moment play out before. You won't listen, she said finally. Not a question. I didn't respond, because she was right. She stood up slowly, joints stiff, movements careful, and gestured for me to follow. Come with me. There was something in her tone that made my chest tighten. Not anger, not fear, something heavier, regret. We walked through the house and out into the backyard. It was quiet out there, almost peaceful, which somehow made it worse. At the far end of the garden sat a small wooden shed, the kind you wouldn't think twice about. But the closer we got, the more something felt wrong. Before she even opened the door, I could smell it. Rot. Thick. Heavy. The kind of smell that doesn't just hit your nose, it settles in your chest and stays there. She paused before unlocking the shed. One last chance to turn around. I didn't take it, so she opened the door, and the smell got so much worse. I stepped inside slowly, eyes adjusting to the dim light. At first I couldn't make sense of what I was looking at. Stains on the floor, dark, old, bones, small ones, too small. And then I saw it. In the corner, a cage, thick metal, reinforced, like something you'd use for a large, dangerous animal. And inside, something was moving. It shifted slightly, then turned its head toward me, and my brain just refused. It was roughly the size of a child, but that's where any similarity ended. Its body was wrong, twisted, skin stretched too tight in some places, too loose in others. Its face, God, its face was almost human, enough that for one horrible second you'd almost believe it. And then the mouth opened, rows of teeth, jagged, way too many. Not just one row, two. And behind those, more. It made a sound, not loud, just wet, hungry. I stepped back without even realizing it. And that's when she spoke, calm, quiet, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. This is what comes back. My chest tightened so hard I thought I was going to be sick. There's still something of her in there, she continued. Not enough to save, but enough to remember. What is it? I managed to ask, but I already knew. She opened a small cabinet, pulled out a can of food, the cheap generic kind, opened it, poured it into a bowl, and slid it through a hatch in the cage. The thing moved instantly, fast, way too fast for something that broken looking. It grabbed the bowl and started eating. The sounds it made, bones crunching, teeth grinding. I covered my mouth. She turned to me, and this time there was no hesitation at all. Cat. I'd like you to meet my granddaughter. My heart stopped. Lila, the name hit harder than anything that had come before it, because now there was no distance left. This wasn't just a monster in a cage. This was someone who used to be human, someone who had been brought back, wrong, broken, hungry. I stumbled backward, shaking my head, unable to even finish a sentence. She spoke quietly into the space I left. I thought anything was better than losing her. I was wrong, and in that silence, everything finally clicked into place. The warning, the rules, the way she'd said don't like she meant it with every bone in her body, because she had tried, and this was the answer she got. If I brought Jamie back, would this be him? I didn't say anything. I just walked out. She didn't try to stop me. I don't think she needed to. The walk back felt like it took hours. The world outside looked completely normal. Cars, people, afternoon sunlight hitting the sidewalk. But it felt like I was watching it through glass, like I was the only person who knew something was fundamentally broken about reality. By the time I got back to the building, I just stood there for a moment, looking up at it. 7 floors, dozens of windows, and behind one of them, everything I had left. I could have walked away. I thought about it, more than once. But then I thought about Jamie, the way he laughed, the way he always left lights on in every room even when I told him not to, the way he'd stood on that balcony on our first night and said, "This is home." I walked back in. The hallway felt the same as always. Quiet, still, too still. I didn't look at the elevator. I took the stairs, counted each step without meaning to. By the time I unlocked the apartment door, my hand was shaking. Inside, everything was exactly the same. The couch, the table, the note, like nothing had changed, but everything had. I sat down, stared at the wall. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Long enough for the light outside to go from gold to gray to nothing. And then the apartment felt different. Not louder, not colder, just aware, like something knew I was back. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. After everything I'd seen, that would have made sense. And then I heard it. A sound, soft, coming from somewhere in the hallway. Not the front hallway. Inside. I froze, waited, listened. Nothing, just silence. But it didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like something had just stopped moving. I stood up slowly, walked toward the hallway, checked every corner, empty. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and turned back toward the living room. That's when I saw it. The note. It wasn't where I'd left it, just slightly off, just enough. I hadn't moved it, and I live alone now. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at that damp patch on the ceiling, and for the first time, I thought I saw it change. Not fully, not dramatically, just enough to look darker, like it was spreading. At some point after midnight, I heard it, that low mechanical sound, distant at first, then closer, the elevator, moving. I checked the time, 1:11 a.m., exactly. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just lay there and listened as it climbed, floor by floor getting closer, until it stopped, right outside. And then, silence. And then, a knock, soft, almost careful, like whoever was on the other side didn't want to wake the whole floor. I knew the rule, I knew it by heart. Don't engage, don't open the door, no matter what. The knock came again, and then a voice, quiet, familiar. Cat? I stopped breathing. It's me. Every part of me wanted to move, to run to the door, to tear it open, but all I could see was that cage, that thing. Lila, and what Prudence had said, they don't come back the same. The voice came again, softer, please. My hand moved anyway, without my permission, reaching toward the door handle, and then I stopped, 1 inch from the handle, because something felt wrong. Not the voice, the silence behind it. Too clean, too patient, like something was holding its breath out there, waiting, not just for me to open the door, but for me to make a mistake. I stood there for what felt like forever. Then I stepped back, and I didn't open it. The knocking stopped. The voice didn't come back. And after a while, I heard the elevator again, going down, slowly until it disappeared. I still live here. I follow the rules, every single one. I don't use the elevator at night. I don't open the door. I don't go looking when I hear sounds that don't make sense. And I have never, not even for a second, tried to bring him back. Because sometimes, late at night, when everything is completely quiet, I still hear that knock. Soft, patient, waiting. And every time I do, I ask myself the same question. What would have happened if I had opened the door?